My family betrayed me. Let's see how they'll live without me.
The security camera footage didn't lie. At 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, my wife Nina slipped into the Riverside Motel with Eric Cole, my daughter's boyfriend's father. The timestamp burned into my retinas as I watched 18 years of marriage crumble in high definition. I'd installed those cameras to protect our home. Never imagined I'd use them to watch my world collapse. My name is Luke Grant. I'm 42, a carpenter by trade, and until 3 weeks ago, I thought I had everything figured out. Small-town Virginia life, steady work, beautiful wife, 2 kids. The American dream wrapped in white picket fences and Sunday dinners. Nina stood in our kitchen that evening, humming while she prepared dinner. Her auburn hair caught the light perfectly, same as it had 20 years ago when we first met. She wore that blue dress I'd bought her for our anniversary. The one she claimed was too fancy for regular occasions. "How was book club?" I asked, leaning against the doorframe. She didn't look up from the cutting board. "Oh, you know how it is. Sandra and her theories about symbolism. Sometimes I wonder if she just makes things up." The lie rolled off her tongue like melted butter. Smooth, practiced, natural. I'd watched her skip book club entirely on that security footage. The Riverside Motel sat 15 miles in the opposite direction. "What book are you reading?" I pressed. The one about the woman in Paris. You wouldn't like it." Nina had always been quick with vague answers, but this felt different. Desperate. Like she was grasping for details that didn't exist. Our daughter Zoe bounced into the kitchen, her phone glued to her ear. At 18, she'd inherited her mother's beauty and her grandmother's attitude. Neither trait served her well. "Mom, Nathan's dad wants to take us all to dinner Friday, like a family thing?" Zoe covered the phone with her palm. "His dad's pretty cool. Used to play for Virginia Tech." Nina's knife paused mid-chop. "Eric Cole?" "Yeah, Nathan says he's always wanted to meet Dad. Something about respecting the man who raised such an amazing daughter." Zoe rolled her eyes. "Boys are so weird." I watched Nina's face flush. Not embarrassment, recognition. The same look she'd worn in that motel parking lot. "That sounds wonderful," Nina said, her voice an octave higher than normal. "I'll make sure your father wears something nice. Something nice, like I was a child being dressed for church." 20 years of marriage, and she spoke about me like I was a project to be managed. Friday arrived with the weight of impending disaster. We met at Romano's, the nicest restaurant in our small town of Cedar Falls. Eric Cole commanded attention the moment he walked in. 6'3", silver-haired, wearing a smile that had charmed college recruiters 30 years ago. He moved like he still owned every room he entered. Nathan followed behind, looking uncomfortable in his pressed khakis. Good kid. Polite, hard-working, genuinely cared about Zoe. Nothing like his father. "Luke Grant," Eric said, extending his hand. "Nathan's told me so much about you. Master carpenter, right? I've got tremendous respect for men who work with their hands." His grip was firm, practiced, the handshake of a man who'd learned to sell himself before he could legally drink. "Eric Cole," I replied. "Nathan's a good kid. Gets that from his mother." Eric's laugh was loud, confident. "I just provide the athletic genes and the questionable decision-making." Nina laughed too quickly, too loudly. The sound scraped against my nerves like nails on wood. We ordered appetizers, and small talk flowed like cheap wine. Eric regaled us with stories from his playing days, his brief stint in the NFL, his current work as a youth athletics coordinator. Nina hung on every word, asking follow-up questions, touching his arm when she laughed. I watched Tyler, my 16-year-old son, study the interaction with quiet intensity. He'd always been the observer in our family, content to listen and learn. Tonight, his dark eyes missed nothing. "So, Luke," Eric said, cutting into his steak, "Nina tells me you're working on the Thompson renovation. That's a massive project." When had Nina and Eric discussed my work? I'd never mentioned the Thompson house to anyone outside immediate family. "News travels fast in small towns," I said carefully. "Indeed it does." Eric's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I was telling Nina just the other day how impressed I am with the craftsmanship on some of the older homes here. Takes real skill to preserve that kind of character. Just the other day." The phrase hung in the air like smoke. "When was this?" I asked. Nina's fork clattered against her plate. "Oh, we ran into each other at the grocery store. Just casual conversation." Another lie. We shopped together every Saturday. Nina hadn't been to the grocery store alone in months. The rest of dinner passed in a haze of forced conversation and growing suspicion. Eric paid the check with a platinum card, making a show of his generosity. Nathan apologized for his father's behavior. Zoe complained about my weird mood all the way home. That night, I lay in bed listening to Nina's breathing. She faced away from me, her body rigid with tension. 20 years of marriage teaches you to read the signs. She wasn't sleeping any more than I was. At 3 a.m., I slipped out of bed and made my way to the home office. The security system stored 2 weeks of footage on local servers. I'd installed it myself, understanding every wire, every setting, every blind spot. The timestamp search function made everything easy. I entered the date Nina claimed to have run into Eric at the grocery store. The cameras showed her leaving the house at 2:15 p.m., returning at 4:30 p.m. No grocery bags, no receipts, no explanation for 2 hours and 15 minutes of missing time. I cross-referenced the time with her phone's location data. The beauty of modern technology. Everything leaves a trail. Her phone had pinged towers near the Riverside Motel for 47 minutes. The evidence was circumstantial but compelling. I needed more. Over the next week, I became a detective in my own marriage. I checked her browser history, her call logs, her text messages. Nina had always been careless with passwords, using our anniversary date for everything. The messages started innocent enough. Eric complimenting her appearance at the restaurant. Nina thanking him for dinner. But they quickly escalated into something else entirely. Eric, can't stop thinking about you in that blue dress. Nina, you're terrible. I'm a married woman. Eric, married to a man who doesn't appreciate what he has. Nina, Luke's a good man. He works hard. Eric, hard work doesn't equal passion. When's the last time he looked at you like I did tonight? The texts continued for days. Flirtation became planning. Planning became action. Nina, book club ends at 4. I can meet you at the usual place. Eric, I'll be waiting. Wear something I can remember. I screenshotted everything. Save the images to a secure folder. Evidence for later. The usual place turned out to be the Riverside Motel. Over the next 2 weeks, I documented 5 separate meetings, always during book club hours. Always followed by Nina coming home with wet hair and excuses about running errands. My wife of 18 years was having an affair with my daughter's boyfriend's father. The betrayal cut deeper than any knife, but betrayal wasn't the worst part. The worst part was Zoe's reaction when she overheard me confronting Nina about her lies. Dad, you're being paranoid, Zoe said, storming into the kitchen. Mom would never cheat on you. She's way too good for that. Too good for what? I asked. For sneaking around, for lying, for being with someone like Eric Cole when she's married to someone like you? The words hit like a physical blow. Someone like you. In my daughter's eyes, I was the problem. The inadequate husband who drove his wife to seek comfort elsewhere. Nina stood behind Zoe, her expression a mixture of guilt and defiance. Luke, we need to talk privately. No, I said firmly. I'm done with private conversations. I'm done with secrets. I'm done with being treated like an idiot in my own home. I walked to the office and returned with printed screenshots of her text messages. I spread them across the kitchen table like playing cards. Explain these, I said. Nina's face went white. Zoe leaned forward, reading over her mother's shoulder. Her expression changed as she absorbed the words. Mom? Zoe's voice was small, uncertain. It's not what it looks like, Nina said weakly. It looks like you're having an affair with Eric Cole, I replied. What else could it possibly look like? Zoe rounded on me with fury I'd never seen before. You went through Mom's phone? You violated her privacy like some kind of stalker? I'm her husband. You're controlling and paranoid and pathetic. Zoe's voice cracked with emotion. No wonder she found someone else. Look at yourself, Dad. Really look. When's the last time you took her anywhere nice? When's the last time you bought her flowers? When's the last time you made her feel special? The accusations stung because they contained fragments of truth. I had been focused on work, on providing, on maintaining the life we'd built together, but I'd never stopped loving my wife. I'd never stopped being faithful. I work 60 hours a week to pay for this house, I said quietly. I work to pay for your college tuition. I work to pay for the car you drive and the clothes you wear and the phone you're constantly attached to. I work so this family can have everything it needs. Money isn't everything, Zoe shot back. It's something. It's security. It's stability. It's the foundation that holds families together. No, Dad. Love holds families together. And when's the last time you told Mom you loved her? I told her every morning before I left for work, every night before we went to sleep. But the words had become routine, automatic. Maybe that was the problem. Nina hadn't spoken during our argument. She stood frozen, watching her daughter defend her affair with passionate intensity. I want a divorce, I said finally. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Nina's composure cracked completely. Luke, please, we can work through this. We can go to counseling. We can't do anything, I interrupted. You made your choice. You chose Eric Cole. You chose to lie to me for weeks. You chose to humiliate me in front of our children. You chose to destroy our family. I didn't choose anything, Nina said desperately. It just happened. We were talking, and he understood me, and I felt alive for the first time in years. You felt alive. I repeated the words slowly. 18 years of marriage, and you felt dead until Eric Cole came along. That's not what I meant. It's exactly what you meant. I left the kitchen and drove to my lawyer's office. By the end of the week, divorce papers had been filed. Nina would get half of everything, as Virginia law required. The house would be sold. The kids would choose which parent to live with. Tyler chose me without hesitation. Zoe chose her mother, but not before delivering a final crushing blow. I'm ashamed to be your daughter, she said, standing in the doorway with her suitcase. Mom deserves better than a bitter, angry man who can't forgive a mistake. A mistake. 5 weeks of planned meetings, secret messages, and deliberate deception. In Zoe's mind, her mother's affair was a simple mistake. The house felt hollow without them. Tyler and I ate dinner in silence, both of us adjusting to the new reality. He helped with dishes, did his homework, went to bed at reasonable hours. A good kid trying to make sense of his fractured family. 3 weeks later, I ran into Eric Cole at the hardware store. He was buying supplies for a deck project, chatting with the clerk about the weather. Normal, everyday conversation between normal, everyday people. Luke, he said when he saw me, how are you holding up? The casual tone, the concerned expression, the complete absence of shame or remorse. He spoke like we were old friends dealing with an unfortunate situation. I'm fine, I replied. Good, good. Listen, I hope there's no hard feelings between us. These things happen, you know? People grow apart. Hearts change. It's nobody's fault. Nobody's fault. The man who'd seduced my wife, destroyed my family, and turned my daughter against me thought it was nobody's fault. You're right, I said calmly. These things happen. Eric smiled with relief. I'm glad you understand. Nina was worried you'd be angry. Why would I be angry? Well, you know, the situation and all. What situation? Eric's smile faltered. The divorce. Nina moving in with me. The kids adjusting to everything. Nina had moved in with him. My wife of 18 years was living in Eric Cole's house, sleeping in Eric Cole's bed, playing house with the man who'd helped destroy our family. I didn't know, I said quietly. Oh, Eric's face flushed. I assumed she'd told you. She didn't. Well, it's still early. We're taking things slow, you know, being respectful of the process. Respectful of the process. The man had been having an affair with my wife for months, and he was concerned about being respectful. I need to go, I said. Of course, take care of yourself, Luke. And remember, Nathan and Zoe are still together. We're going to be family soon. Family. The word echoed in my head as I drove home. Eric Cole thought we were going to be family. That night, I sat in my empty house and made a decision. I was done being the victim. I was done being the understanding ex-husband. I was done being the man who worked hard and said nothing, while others took everything he'd built. I was going to destroy Eric Cole's life the same way he'd destroyed mine. Not with violence. Not with crime. With patience, planning, and the kind of methodical precision I'd learned from 20 years of carpentry. Every joint had to be perfect. Every measurement had to be exact. Every cut had to be clean. Eric Cole was about to learn what happened when you stole from a man who knew how to build things and how to tear them down. I started with research. Eric Cole's life was surprisingly well documented. Local newspaper archives, school district records, social media profiles. 20 years of public existence laid bare with a few hours of systematic searching. Eric had played football at Virginia Tech from 1995 to 1999. Decent stats, nothing spectacular. He'd been drafted by the Carolina Panthers in the 7th round, but cut during preseason. After that, he'd bounced around semi-professional leagues for a few years before accepting reality. He'd returned to Cedar Falls in 2003 and married Jennifer Walsh, a local teacher. They'd had Nathan in 2005, divorced in 2018. The divorce records were sealed, but the local gossip network filled in the gaps. Eric had been caught having an affair with the assistant coach's wife. Jennifer had taken him for half his assets and moved to Richmond. Pattern recognition. Eric Cole was a serial cheater who targeted married women. My wife wasn't his first victim, and she wouldn't be his last. His current job as youth athletics coordinator paid $48,000 annually. Decent money for our small town, but not enough to support the lifestyle he projected. The BMW, the expensive clothes, the platinum credit card. Eric Cole was living beyond his means. I dug deeper into his financial records, public information, all of it. Property tax assessments, vehicle registrations, business licenses. Eric owned a small gym called Cole's Fitness that he'd opened 2 years ago. The business was struggling based on the property tax delinquencies and the fact that he'd mortgaged his house to fund it. More interesting was his involvement with the Cedar Falls Youth Foundation. Eric served on the board of directors and had access to the organization's finances. Nonprofit organizations were required to file annual reports with the state. Those reports were public record. I spent an entire weekend reviewing 5 years of financial disclosures. The numbers told an interesting story. The Youth Foundation raised approximately $200,000 annually through donations and fundraising events. Most of that money was supposed to go toward equipment, facilities, and program costs. But the foundation was also paying Eric's company, Cole's Fitness, $12,000 annually for equipment maintenance and facility services. Those payments had started 2 years ago, coinciding with when Eric opened his gym. Self-dealing. Eric Cole was using his position on the nonprofit board to funnel money to his own business. Not technically illegal, but ethically questionable. The kind of thing that would raise eyebrows if it became public knowledge. I made copies of everything and stored them in a secure folder. Next, I focused on his reputation. Eric traded on his image as a former college athlete and community leader. He coached youth football, organized charity events, and spoke at school assemblies about making good choices. His entire identity was built on public perception. Public perception was fragile. It could be shattered with the right pressure applied at the right moment. I started small. Anonymous tips to local reporters about Eric's questionable business practices. Nothing dramatic, just enough to plant seeds of doubt. A few phone calls to parents questioning whether Cole's Fitness was the right place for their children to train. The beauty of small-town gossip was its self-sustaining nature. Once questions were raised, they spread organically. People began asking why Eric Cole's gym was being paid by the Youth Foundation. Board members started requesting detailed financial records. Within a month, Eric was removed from the foundation board pending an investigation. The local newspaper ran a small article about leadership changes at the nonprofit. Eric's name was mentioned in the context of conflicts of interest and potential impropriety. The investigation found no criminal wrongdoing, but Eric's reputation was damaged. Parents began pulling their kids from his programs. The gym started losing members. I watched from a distance as Eric's carefully constructed image began to crumble. But I wasn't done, not even close. The next phase required patience and precision. I needed to destroy Eric's relationship with my wife without appearing to be involved. Nina had always been insecure about her appearance. She'd gained weight after Tyler's birth and never quite lost it. She was beautiful, but she'd never believed it. Eric had exploited that insecurity, making her feel desirable and appreciated. I knew Nina's weaknesses because I'd spent 18 years learning them. She was vain, impulsive, and desperately needed validation. Eric was providing that validation, but his motivations were selfish. I began documenting Eric's behavior patterns. He was a creature of habit, visiting the same restaurants, shopping at the same stores, following the same routines. More importantly, he was still flirting with other women. The man couldn't help himself. Even while living with my wife, he was chatting up waitresses, complimenting cashiers, and maintaining active profiles on dating apps. I created fake social media accounts and followed his online activity. Eric Cole was cheating on Nina the same way he'd cheated on his ex-wife, the same way he'd cheated with Nina while she was married to me. I began gathering evidence. Photos of Eric with other women, screenshots of his dating profiles, records of his visits to bars and restaurants when Nina thought he was working late. The man was compulsively unfaithful. But I didn't give this information to Nina directly. She wouldn't have believed it coming from me. Instead, I made sure she discovered it herself. A printed screenshot left on her car windshield, an anonymous email with photos attached, a concerned friend who'd heard rumors about Eric's behavior. Each piece of evidence was delivered in a way that seemed independent and credible. Nina's world began to crack. She confronted Eric about the evidence, leading to fights that Tyler overheard when he visited her apartment. She became paranoid, checking his phone, questioning his whereabouts, demanding explanations for his behavior. Eric, true to form, denied everything. He accused Nina of being paranoid and controlling. He suggested she was projecting her own guilt about cheating on me onto him. The relationship deteriorated rapidly. Nina discovered Eric's active dating profiles and realized he'd been lying about his commitment to their relationship. She found evidence of his ongoing affairs and confronted him in a screaming match that the neighbors called the police about. Within 3 months, Nina had moved out of Eric's house and into a small apartment across town. She was alone, broke, and slowly understanding that Eric Cole had used her the same way he'd used every other woman in his life. But I still wasn't done with Eric Cole. The final phase of my plan required the most careful execution. I needed to destroy Eric's livelihood and his standing in the community without leaving any trace of my involvement. I reached out to Jennifer Walsh, Eric's ex-wife, through a mutual acquaintance. I explained that I was researching Eric's background for a potential business partnership and wondered if she had any insights about his character. Jennifer was more than willing to share. Eric had been a serial cheater throughout their marriage. He'd used joint credit cards to fund his affairs, lied about his income and hidden assets during their divorce. She'd suspected him of financial impropriety but had never been able to prove it. More importantly, Jennifer told me about Eric's pattern of targeting married women. He specifically sought out women who were unhappy in their marriages, presenting himself as a supportive friend before escalating to an affair. He'd done it to multiple women in their social circle. I thanked Jennifer for her time and asked if she'd be willing to speak with other women who might have been victimized by Eric's behavior. She was enthusiastic about the prospect. I began identifying Eric's other victims. Small-town memory was long, and people remembered scandals. I tracked down 3 other women who'd had affairs with Eric Cole over the past 5 years. All of them had been married at the time. All of them had been left with broken families and damaged reputations. I convinced these women to come forward and share their stories, not for legal action, but for community awareness. They agreed to speak with the local newspaper about Eric's pattern of behavior. The article was devastating. Local youth coordinator accused of serial affairs ran on the front page of the Cedar Falls Gazette. 4 women, including Jennifer, spoke on record about Eric's predatory behavior. The article detailed his pattern of targeting married women, his financial improprieties, and his abuse of his position in the community. Eric's world collapsed overnight. He was fired from his job with the school district. His gym lost its remaining members and closed within a week. The Youth Foundation banned him from all future involvement. His reputation was destroyed beyond repair. Within a month, Eric Cole had left Cedar Falls entirely. He'd lost his job, his business, his home, and his standing in the community. He'd become a pariah, whispered about in grocery stores and warned against at PTA meetings. I'd destroyed Eric Cole's life using nothing but patience, research, and the truth. No violence, no crime, no illegal activity. Just methodical, precise demolition of everything he'd built. But I still wasn't finished. Eric Cole was gone, but my family was still broken. Nina was alone and struggling, but she'd made her choice. Zoe was still angry with me, still blaming me for the divorce, still unable to see the truth about her mother's affair. It was time to deal with my daughter. I'd been documenting everything throughout the divorce process. Every conversation, every text message, every interaction. I learned that Zoe had known about her mother's affair weeks before I'd discovered it. She'd actively encouraged Nina to leave me, telling her she deserved better and that I was holding her back. My own daughter had conspired against me. She'd helped destroy our family and then blame me for the consequences. I arranged to meet Zoe for coffee at a neutral location. She agreed reluctantly, probably expecting another attempt at reconciliation. "I have something to show you," I said, sliding a folder across the table. Zoe opened it suspiciously. Inside were screenshots of her text messages with Nina, dating back to the early days of the affair. Messages where Zoe encouraged her mother to follow her heart and stop settling for less. Messages where she called me boring and pathetic and suggested that Nina deserved someone who appreciated her. "Where did you get these?" Zoe asked, her voice shaking. "Your mother's phone. She used the same password for everything. You had no right to—" "I had every right," I interrupted. "I was her husband. I was being betrayed by my wife and my daughter, and I had every right to know the truth." Zoe's face crumpled as she read her own words. She'd been 18 years old, legally an adult, and she'd actively participated in destroying her parents' marriage. "I was trying to help Mom be happy," she whispered. "You were trying to help her justify her affair. You were trying to make her feel better about lying to me and cheating on me and destroying our family. I didn't know it would end like this. What did you think would happen? Did you think I'd just accept it? Did you think I'd be grateful that my wife found someone better?" Zoe didn't answer. She sat staring at the evidence of her own betrayal, understanding for the first time that her actions had consequences. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," I continued. "I'm not asking for a relationship. I'm just making sure you understand what you did. You helped destroy our family, and then you blamed me for the wreckage. I was protecting Mom. You were protecting your own fantasy about who your mother was. You couldn't accept that she was capable of lying and cheating and betraying the man who'd loved her for 18 years. Zoe looked up at me with tears in her eyes. "I was 18, Dad. I didn't know any better. You were old enough to know right from wrong. You were old enough to understand that affairs destroy families. You were old enough to tell your mother to stop seeing Eric Cole and work on her marriage instead. I thought you and Mom were wrong for each other. That wasn't your decision to make." We sat in silence for several minutes. Zoe read through more of her messages, seeing her own words reflected back at her. The casual cruelty, the dismissive attitude toward me, the active encouragement of her mother's affair. "What do you want from me?" she asked finally. "Nothing," I said. "I want you to live with the consequences of your choices. I want you to understand that actions have repercussions. I want you to remember this conversation the next time you're tempted to interfere in other people's lives. I'm sorry. I know you are, but sorry doesn't rebuild trust. Sorry doesn't undo the damage. Sorry doesn't bring back the family you helped destroy." I stood up and left her sitting at the table. I'd said everything I needed to say. Zoe would have to live with her choices, just like I was living with mine. 6 months later, I ran into Nina at the grocery store. She looked older, tired, worn down by the consequences of her affair. Her hair was graying, her clothes were cheaper, and she'd lost weight in an unhealthy way. "Hello, Luke," she said quietly. "Nina, how are you doing?" "I'm fine. How are you?" "I'm managing. The apartment is small, but it's enough for me." She was alone. Eric Cole was gone. Zoe was away at college. And Nina was facing the reality of middle-aged divorce in a small town. She'd lost her family, her security, and her future for a man who'd discarded her as soon as the novelty wore off. "I heard about Eric," I said. "Yes. He left town. I haven't heard from him since—" "Are you surprised?" Nina looked at me with something approaching awareness. "No, I guess I'm not. He was never going to stay. Men like Eric don't change. They just find new victims. I know that now. But you didn't know it then." "I thought I did. I thought I was different. I thought what we had was real. It was real. It was a real affair. And it really destroyed our family." Nina's composure cracked. "I know I hurt you. I know I made terrible choices. I know I threw away 18 years of marriage for something that was never going to last. Yes, you did. Is there any chance? Could we ever—" "No," I said firmly. "There's no going back. You made your choice, and I made mine. I miss our family. We don't have a family anymore. We have 2 kids with divorced parents. We have shared custody and awkward conversations at graduations. We have the broken pieces of something that used to be beautiful." Nina started crying right there in the cereal aisle. Quiet, desperate sobs that came from a place of absolute loss. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." "I know you are. But sorry doesn't fix anything. Sorry doesn't bring back trust. Sorry doesn't undo the damage." I walked away and left her crying in the grocery store. I felt no satisfaction, no triumph, no sense of justice, just a hollow emptiness where my family used to be. That night, I sat in my apartment with Tyler, watching television and eating takeout Chinese food. He was a good kid, mature beyond his years, trying to hold together the pieces of his fractured family. "Dad," he said during a commercial break, "do you think Mom will ever be okay?" "I don't know," I replied honestly. "That's up to her." "Do you think Zoe will ever forgive you?" "I don't know that either. That's up to her, too." "Are you happy?" The question caught me off guard. Was I happy? I'd successfully destroyed Eric Cole's life. I'd exposed the truth about my wife's affair and my daughter's betrayal. I'd protected myself financially and legally. I'd emerged from the divorce with my reputation intact and my dignity preserved. But was I happy? "I'm not unhappy," I said finally. "I'm not the victim anymore. I'm not the man who gets cheated on and lied to and betrayed by his own family. I'm not the man who works hard and says nothing while others take everything he's built. But are you happy?" "I'm satisfied," I said. "I'm satisfied that the truth came out. I'm satisfied that Eric Cole got what he deserved. I'm satisfied that your mother and sister understand the consequences of their choices. That's not the same as being happy." "No, it's not." Tyler nodded thoughtfully. "I think you did the right thing, Dad. I think you stood up for yourself when nobody else would." "Thank you, son. But I also think you're angrier than you used to be. Harder. Like you don't trust people anymore." He was right. I'd become harder, more calculating, more suspicious of other people's motives. I'd learned that the people closest to you were capable of the deepest betrayals. "Trust is something you earn," I said. "It can't be given freely anymore." "I know. I just miss the way things used to be." "Me too." We finished our dinner in comfortable silence. Tyler did his homework while I reviewed blueprints for a new construction project. Normal, everyday activities that helped fill the space where our family used to be. A year later, I received a wedding invitation in the mail. Nathan Walsh was marrying a girl from the next town over. A small ceremony, family only. I wasn't invited, but Tyler was. Nathan had changed his name back to his mother's maiden name. He'd graduated high school, enrolled in community college, and was working part-time at a local garage. A good kid who'd overcome his father's legacy and built something positive for himself. I was proud of him. He'd chosen to be better than Eric Cole, to break the cycle of selfishness and betrayal that had defined his father's life. At the wedding, Tyler sat with Jennifer Walsh and her new husband. They'd remarried quietly, found happiness after the disaster of their first marriage. Jennifer had forgiven Nathan for his father's sins and welcomed him back into her life. Zoe was there too, looking beautiful and confident in her college clothes. She'd changed her major from pre-law to social work, apparently inspired by her own family's dysfunction. She was dating a boy from her psychology class, someone stable and kind who treated her well. She hugged Tyler warmly and asked about me. Tyler told her I was doing well, staying busy with work, dating occasionally. All true, but not the complete picture. Nina wasn't at the wedding. She'd moved to Richmond to be closer to her sister, taken a job at a medical office, and was trying to rebuild her life. She sent Tyler cards on holidays and called him once a week. They had a relationship, but it was distant and formal. I was alone in my apartment that evening when Tyler returned from the wedding. He was quiet, thoughtful, processing the day's events. "How was it?" I asked. "Nice. Small, but nice." "Nathan seems happy." "Good for him." "Zoe asked about you." "What did you tell her?" "That you were doing well, that you were working on the Morrison house, that you'd started dating again." "How did she react?" "She seemed relieved, I guess. Like she was worried you'd never move on." I'd been dating, but not seriously. A few dinners, a couple of movies, some pleasant conversations with women who didn't know my history. Nothing deep, nothing meaningful. I wasn't ready for real intimacy yet. "Dad," Tyler said carefully, "do you think you'll ever forgive Mom and Zoe?" "I don't know. Forgiveness is complicated." "But you're not angry anymore, are you?" I considered the question. Was I still angry? The rage that had driven me to destroy Eric Cole's life had cooled into something else. Not forgiveness, but not hatred either. A kind of resigned acceptance of human nature. "I'm not angry," I said finally. I'm just careful. I understand now that people are capable of terrible things, even people you love, especially people you love. That's sad. It's realistic. Tyler went to bed, and I sat alone in the living room, thinking about forgiveness and family and the price of revenge. I'd gotten everything I'd wanted. Eric Cole was gone. The truth about Nina's affair was public knowledge. Zoe understood the consequences of her betrayal. I'd emerged from the divorce with my dignity intact and my reputation preserved. But I was alone. 43 years old, living in a small apartment, eating takeout dinners and watching television by myself. I'd won the war, but lost everything worth fighting for. The next morning, I received an unexpected phone call. Jennifer Walsh was on the line, calling from Richmond. Luke, I hope you don't mind me calling. I got your number from Tyler. Of course not, Jennifer. How are you? I'm well, thank you. Listen, I wanted to talk to you about something. About Nina. My stomach tightened. What about her? She's not doing well, Luke. She's been struggling since the divorce. Lost her job last month. Can't make rent on her apartment. She's been asking me for help, but I don't know what to tell her. Why are you telling me this? Because you're the only person who knew her before all this happened. You're the only person who remembers what she was like before she made those terrible choices. That woman doesn't exist anymore. I think she does. I think she's buried under all the guilt and shame and regret, but she's still there. She calls me sometimes, crying about how she destroyed her family. She knows what she did was wrong. Knowing something was wrong doesn't undo the damage. No, but it's a start. Luke, I'm not asking you to forgive her. I'm not asking you to take her back. I'm just asking you to remember that she's a human being who made human mistakes. Human mistakes don't usually involve months of premeditated deception. You're right. What she did was calculated and cruel. But she's paying for it now. She's alone, broke, and has to live with the knowledge that she threw away 18 years of marriage for a man who used her and discarded her. That's her choice to live with. Yes, it is. But it's also your choice whether to have compassion for her suffering. Jennifer's words stayed with me for days. I'd been so focused on justice and revenge that I'd forgotten about mercy. Nina had destroyed our family, but she was still the mother of my children. She was still the woman I'd loved for 18 years. But compassion and reconciliation were different things. I could feel sorry for Nina's situation without forgetting what she'd done to our family. 2 weeks later, I was working on a kitchen renovation when my phone rang. It was Zoe calling from college. Dad? I need to talk to you about something important. What's wrong? It's about Mom. She's in the hospital. My heart stopped. What happened? She collapsed at work. They think it was a panic attack, but they're running tests. She's been having them for months, apparently. The stress of everything. Is she okay? Physically, yes, but Dad, she's falling apart. She can't sleep, can't eat, can't focus on anything. She keeps talking about how she ruined our family. Zoe, I'm sorry she's struggling, but I don't know what you want me to do. I want you to visit her, just once. Not to get back together, not to forgive her, just to let her know that you don't hate her. I don't hate her. Then tell her that. Please, Dad. She needs to hear it from you. I drove to Richmond the next day. The hospital was small and sterile, smelling of disinfectant and despair. I found Nina in room 347, looking small and fragile in her hospital gown. She was awake, staring at the ceiling when I walked in. When she saw me, her face crumpled with emotion. Luke, you came. Zoe called me. She's worried about you. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. I know you probably hate me, and you have every right to, but I needed you to know that I'm sorry. I sat down in the chair beside her bed. I don't hate you, Nina. You should. I destroyed our family for nothing. I threw away 18 years of marriage for a man who didn't care about me at all. Why did you do it? I don't know. I felt invisible, I guess. Like you didn't see me anymore. Like I was just the mother of your children and the person who kept your house clean. Eric made me feel beautiful and desirable and alive. I saw you every day. I told you I loved you every day. You said the words, but they felt automatic. Like you were going through the motions. Eric looked at me like I was the most interesting woman in the world. Because he was trying to seduce you. That's what men like Eric do. They make women feel special so they can use them. I know that now. I knew it then too, deep down, but I didn't want to admit it. I wanted to believe that someone could look at me and see something worth fighting for. I fought for you for 18 years. I worked 60 hours a week to give you everything you wanted. I built us a life, a home, a family. What was Eric fighting for? Sex. Novelty. The thrill of taking something that belonged to someone else. And you let him. Yes, I let him. I made a choice. And it was the worst choice I've ever made in my life. We sat in silence for several minutes. Nina looked older, worn down by months of guilt and regret. The beautiful, confident woman I'd married had been replaced by someone broken and desperate. "I'm not asking you to forgive me," she said finally. "I'm not asking you to take me back. I'm just asking you to believe that I'm sorry. That I know what I did was wrong, that I would give anything to undo it. I believe you're sorry, but sorry doesn't fix what's broken. I know. I needed you to know that losing you was the biggest mistake of my life. Not just because of the financial security or the comfortable life we had, because I lost my best friend. I lost the person who knew me better than anyone else in the world. You threw that away for Eric Cole." "Yes, I did. And I'll regret it for the rest of my life." I stood up to leave. "Take care of yourself, Nina. Get better. The kids need their mother." "Luke, wait, can I ask you something?" "What?" "Are you happy? Are you building something new for yourself?" "I'm trying to." "Good. You deserve happiness. You deserve someone who appreciates what you have to offer." "So did you. You just never realized it." I left her in the hospital room and drove home. The conversation had provided some closure, but it hadn't changed anything fundamental. Nina was sorry, but our marriage was still over. Our family was still broken. The trust was still destroyed. 3 months later, Tyler graduated from high school. The ceremony was awkward, with Nina and me sitting on opposite sides of the auditorium while Zoe tried to navigate between us. But we were civil, polite, focused on celebrating Tyler's achievement. At the graduation party, I watched my son interact with his friends and realized how much he'd grown during the past 2 years. He was mature, responsible, kind. He'd survived his parents' divorce and emerged as a better man than either of his parents. "Dad," Tyler said, pulling me aside during the party, "I got into Virginia Tech, full academic scholarship." "That's incredible, son. I'm so proud of you. I want to study engineering, maybe go into construction like you, but on the design side. That's a good field. Stable, respectable work. Like father, like son, right? Better than your father, I hope." Tyler looked at me seriously. "Dad, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest." "What is it?" "Do you regret destroying Eric Cole's life?" The question caught me off guard. "Why do you ask?" "Because I've been thinking about it a lot. What you did was impressive, I guess, methodical, thorough, but it was also kind of scary. Like you became someone else entirely. I became someone who wouldn't be taken advantage of. You became someone who could destroy another person's life without feeling guilty about it. Eric Cole destroyed our family. He got what he deserved. Maybe, but you didn't just ruin his reputation or his business. You made him into a pariah. You drove him out of town. You made it impossible for him to recover. And I'm wondering if that's who you want to be. The man who destroys people who cross him." Tyler's words stung because they contained truth. I had become someone harder, more calculating, more capable of cruelty. The man who'd destroyed Eric Cole's life was not the same man who'd built a family and a life in Cedar Falls. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I don't know who I am anymore. I think you're still my dad. I think you're still the man who taught me to work hard and treat people fairly. I think you just got hurt so badly that you forgot who you were for a while. Maybe. The important thing is that you remember now, that you choose to be better than what happened to you." Tyler was wise beyond his years. He'd watched his family fall apart and learned lessons that most people don't discover until middle age. He understood that revenge was a poison that damaged the person seeking it as much as the target. "I'm proud of you, son," I said. "You're a better man than I am." I'm trying to be the man you raised me to be. The man you were before all this happened. That night, I sat in my apartment and thought about the man I'd become. I'd achieved everything I'd set out to accomplish. Eric Cole was gone. Nina understood the consequences of her affair. Zoe knew the truth about her betrayal. I'd emerged from the divorce with my dignity intact, but I'd also become someone I didn't recognize, someone who could methodically destroy another person's life without losing sleep. Someone who valued justice over mercy, revenge over forgiveness. I thought about Tyler's words, about Jennifer's call, about Nina's apology in the hospital, about the choice between being right and being happy. I'd been right about everything. Nina had betrayed me. Zoe had conspired against me. Eric Cole had used my wife and destroyed my family. I'd been the victim of cruel, selfish people who'd cared more about their own desires than the damage they caused. But being right hadn't made me happy. It had made me alone. The next morning, I called Jennifer Walsh. "Jennifer, it's Luke Grant. I wanted to thank you for calling me about Nina." "Of course. How is she doing?" "Better, I think. We talked. It didn't change anything, but it was closure, I guess. I'm glad. Luke, can I ask you something?" "What? Are you okay? Really okay?" "I'm not sure. I think I became someone I don't like very much over the past 2 years. Hurt people hurt people. It's one of the oldest truths in the world. I don't want to be that person anymore." "Then don't be. It's a choice, Luke. Every day you can choose to be bitter or choose to heal. You can choose to hold on to the anger or choose to let it go. I don't know how to let it go. Start small. Forgive one person for one thing. See how it feels. Who should I forgive? That's up to you, but I'd suggest starting with yourself. Forgive myself. For being the kind of husband who worked hard but didn't pay attention. For being so focused on providing that I forgot to connect. For destroying Eric Cole's life with such methodical precision. For becoming someone my son was afraid of. It was a strange thought. I'd spent 2 years focused on other people's sins that I'd forgotten about my own. 2 weeks later, I was working on a deck project when my phone rang. It was Zoe calling from college. "Dad, I wanted to tell you something. I'm sorry." "For what?" "For everything. For encouraging Mom's affair. For blaming you for the divorce. For being so angry and cruel. I was 18 and thought I knew everything, but I didn't know anything." "Zoe, no, let me finish. I've been in therapy talking about the family stuff. I realize now that I was trying to justify Mom's behavior because I couldn't handle the truth about who she really was. It was easier to blame you than to admit that my mother was capable of destroying our family. You were just a kid. I was old enough to know better. I was old enough to tell Mom to stop seeing Eric and work on her marriage. I was old enough to stay neutral instead of taking sides. I was old enough to think about Tyler and what the divorce would do to him. We all made mistakes. You didn't make mistakes, Dad. You got betrayed by your wife and your daughter, and you reacted like any normal person would. Maybe you went too far with Eric, but I understand why you did it. I'm not proud of what I did to Eric. I am. He destroyed our family and walked away without any consequences. You made sure he faced justice. Justice and revenge aren't the same thing. Maybe not. But sometimes they're close enough. We talked for an hour, really talked, for the first time in 2 years. Zoe told me about college, about her boyfriend, about her plans for the future. She was studying social work, hoping to help families stay together. "I want to prevent other families from going through what we went through," she said. "That's a good goal." "Dad, can I ask you something?" "What?" "Are you ever going to forgive Mom?" "I don't know. I'm trying to figure out what forgiveness means. It doesn't mean you have to get back together. It doesn't mean you have to forget what happened. It just means you stop carrying the anger around with you." "When did you become so wise?" "When I realized that hating you was destroying me the same way hating Mom was destroying you." After we hung up, I sat in my empty apartment and thought about forgiveness, about the difference between justice and revenge, about the man I'd been and the man I wanted to become. I thought about Tyler's graduation, about his scholarship, about his plans for the future. He was building something positive from the wreckage of our family. He was choosing to be better than what had happened to him. I thought about Zoe's apology, about her therapy, about her desire to help other families. She was trying to make amends for her mistakes. She was choosing growth over blame. I thought about Nina in the hospital, broken and desperate, living with the consequences of her choices. She was paying the price for her affair, but she was also trying to rebuild her life. Everyone was moving forward except me. Everyone was trying to be better except me. That night, I made a decision. I was going to stop being the man who destroyed Eric Cole's life. I was going to start being the man who built something better from the ashes of his old life. I was going to forgive my family. Not because they deserved it, but because I deserved to be free from the anger that was poisoning my life. I was going to forgive myself for being an imperfect husband, an imperfect father, and an imperfect man who'd lost his way in the darkness of betrayal. I was going to build something new. Not a family, because that was gone forever, but a life. A life worth living, worth sharing, worth leaving behind. The next morning, I called Tyler at college. "Dad, is everything okay?" "Everything's fine, son. I just wanted to tell you that I'm proud of you. And I'm going to try to be the man you remember from before all this happened. You're already that man, Dad. You just forgot for a while. I love you, Tyler." "I love you too, Dad." I called Zoe next. "Dad, I wanted to tell you that I forgive you, and I'm proud of the woman you're becoming." She started crying. "Thank you, Dad. That means everything to me." "I love you, Zoe. No matter what happened, no matter what mistakes were made, I love you." "I love you too, Dad." Finally, I called Nina. She was surprised to hear from me. "Luke, is everything all right?" "I wanted to tell you that I forgive you. I'm not asking you to forgive me, and I'm not trying to get back together. I just wanted you to know that I'm letting go of the anger." "Luke, I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know that I don't hate you. I'm sorry for my part in our marriage failing. I'm sorry for being the kind of husband who took you for granted. I'm sorry for becoming someone who could destroy Eric Cole's life without feeling guilty about it. You don't need to apologize to me. Yes, I do. We both made mistakes. We both failed our family. The difference is that you're trying to make amends, and I've been trying to make people pay. I destroyed our family, Luke. What I did was unforgivable. Nothing is unforgivable. Some things are unforgettable, but nothing is unforgivable." We talked for a few more minutes, clearing the air between us. It wasn't reconciliation, but it was peace. We would never be husband and wife again, but we could be co-parents who respected each other. 6 months later, Tyler came home for Christmas break. He was thriving at Virginia Tech, making friends, excelling in his studies, building a life for himself. "You look different, Dad," he said when I picked him up at the airport. "Different how? Lighter. Like you're not carrying something heavy around anymore." "I'm not. Good. I miss the man you used to be. I missed him too." We had Christmas dinner together, just the two of us. Tyler told me about his classes, his friends, his plans for the future. He was going to be an engineer, designing buildings that would stand for generations. "I want to build things that last," he said, "like you do." "I think you will, son. I think you'll build something beautiful." That night, after Tyler went to bed, I sat in my apartment and thought about the past 3 years. I'd lost my wife, my daughter, my home, my sense of identity. I'd become someone I didn't recognize, someone capable of cruelty and calculated revenge. But I'd also found something. I'd found strength I didn't know I had. I'd found the ability to survive betrayal and rebuild my life. I'd found the courage to forgive people who didn't deserve forgiveness. Most importantly, I'd found my way back to being the man my son respected and my daughter loved. I was 45 years old, living alone, starting over. But I wasn't the victim anymore. I wasn't the man who got cheated on and lied to and betrayed by his own family. I wasn't the man who destroyed people who crossed him. I was Luke Grant. I was a father, a carpenter, a man who built things that lasted. I was someone who had learned that revenge was a poison that damaged the person seeking it more than the target. I was someone who had chosen forgiveness over bitterness, healing over hatred, love over revenge. I was free.